In September 2008, a man had the chance to save his company. All he had to do was say yes. Buyers were circling. A bank from Korea wanted to invest. Warren Buffett had been sounded out. Other suitors appeared. Any one of them could have injected the money that would keep the firm alive. All the man had to do was accept a deal, swallow his pride, and take the lifeline. He said no. Again and again he said no. The price was never high enough. The terms were never good enough. He was certain a better offer would come, certain the government would never let a firm this important fail, certain that he, one of the most powerful men on Wall Street, knew better than the market screaming at him to sell. The man was Richard Fuld. The company was Lehman Brothers. And within days of his final refusal, the firm was gone. The largest bankruptcy in the history of the United States. A detonation that helped blow a hole in the entire global economy. This is the story of how a 150-year-old institution, a firm that had survived the Civil War, 2 world wars, and the Great Depression, destroyed itself in a matter of months. Not because it had to, but because the man at the top could not bring himself to accept that the party was over. My name is unimportant. What matters is the body on the table. And today, the body is Lehman Brothers. Let's begin the autopsy. To understand how shocking Lehman's fall was, you have to understand how old and how proud it had become. Lehman Brothers began in 1850 as a humble cotton trading business in Alabama, founded by German immigrant brothers. Over the next century and a half, it evolved, survived, and clawed its way to the heart of American finance. By the 2000s, Lehman was one of the most powerful investment banks in the world, a Wall Street titan, trading and dealing in vast sums, employing tens of thousands of people, generating billions in profit. At its head stood Richard Fuld, nicknamed the Gorilla for his aggressive, combative style. Fuld had run Lehman for years and had led it through previous crises. He was fiercely loyal to the firm, and the firm was fiercely loyal to him. He had made himself and many others extraordinarily rich. He was, by any measure, a titan, respected, feared, and utterly convinced of his own judgment. And in the years leading up to the crisis, Lehman made a bet. The same bet much of Wall Street was making. It bet, enormously, on the American housing market. To understand why, you have to understand the intoxicating logic of the mid-2000s. American house prices had been rising for years, and to almost everyone on Wall Street, they seemed like they would rise forever. Housing felt safe. It felt like the one thing that could not go down. So the banks built an entire industry on top of it, lending money to home buyers, bundling those loans together into securities, and selling them to investors around the world as if they were nearly as safe as government bonds. The fees were enormous. The profits were enormous. And Lehman, under Fuld, threw itself into this business with particular aggression, determined not just to participate but to dominate. For a while, it was a triumph. Lehman's profits hit record highs. Its stock soared. Fuld was celebrated as a visionary who had transformed a mid-tier firm into a Wall Street powerhouse. The bonuses were staggering. The confidence was total. This was the summit. Lehman was riding a booming market, its profits soaring, its leaders convinced they were geniuses, and that conviction was about to become the thing that killed them. To understand the fatal decision, you have to understand the bet. In the years before 2008, Lehman poured itself into real estate and mortgages, including the now infamous subprime mortgages, loans made to borrowers with weak credit. Lehman didn't just dabble. It became one of the biggest players in the game, packaging these mortgages into complex securities, buying property, and loading its books with real estate-related assets. And it did all of this using enormous leverage. Leverage is borrowed money. Lehman was operating with a tiny sliver of its own capital, supporting a gigantic mountain of borrowed funds, at ratios of roughly 30-to-1 or more. That means for every dollar Lehman actually had, it controlled around $30 of assets. Leverage is a magnifier. When prices rise, it multiplies your profits spectacularly. But it works both ways. When prices fall, it multiplies your losses just as fast. And when you are leveraged 30-to-1, it takes only a small drop in the value of your assets to wipe out your entire cushion of real capital and leave you insolvent. Lehman had built a skyscraper of borrowed money on a foundation of housing, and in 2007, that foundation began to crack. Housing prices stalled and then fell. Subprime borrowers began to default. The complex securities Lehman held began to lose value. The mountain of assets started to shrink, and with 30-to-1 leverage, it did not take much shrinkage to threaten the entire firm. By early 2008, the market knew Lehman was in danger. Its stock began to fall, confidence began to erode, and this is where the fatal decision begins. Before we follow the body further down, I want to ask you something. If you find this kind of autopsy valuable, if you want to understand the exact decision that kills great companies, subscribe to this channel. Every episode, we lay one fallen empire on the table and find the true cause of death. It costs you nothing. Now, back to the body. As the danger grew through 2008, Richard Fuld had a series of chances to save Lehman. And this is the heart of the autopsy. Because he was not trapped, he had options. He simply refused to take them. The core problem was clear. Lehman needed capital. It needed either to raise money or to sell itself to a stronger partner who could absorb its losses and guarantee its survival. Other troubled firms in this exact period did precisely that. They swallowed their pride, found a buyer or an investor, and survived, even in weakened form. Fuld was offered paths like this. There were discussions with potential investors, including interest from a Korean bank that could have injected badly needed capital. There were possibilities of deals with other institutions. But time and again, the deals fell apart, and a recurring reason was price. Fuld believed Lehman was worth far more than buyers were willing to pay. He held out for better terms. He resisted selling the firm, or pieces of it, at what he saw as fire sale prices. Underneath this was a fatal set of beliefs. Fuld was convinced that Lehman's troubles were temporary, that the market was wrong, that the value would come back. He was convinced that a firm as important as Lehman, so interconnected, so central, would never be allowed to simply collapse. Surely, he believed, the government would step in, as it had helped arrange a rescue for Bear Stearns earlier that year. And he was proud. Selling cheap, or being taken over, felt like defeat, an admission that the great Lehman and the great Fuld had failed. So he waited. He held out for the better deal that never came. He gambled that a rescue would materialize. And with each passing week, as he waited, Lehman's situation grew worse. Its assets worth less, its options fewer, its stock lower, until the firm that could have been sold for something was worth almost nothing at all. Consider the cruelty of the timing. Earlier in 2008, when Lehman's stock was still relatively high and confidence had not yet fully collapsed, a deal could have been struck from a position of relative strength. The Korean investment, had it closed, might have stabilized the firm. But as the negotiations dragged, and Fuld held out for better terms, the ground shifted beneath him. Every week that a deal was not done, Lehman became a more frightening prospect for any buyer. Its losses larger, its future murkier, its stock cheaper. Fuld was trying to sell into a falling market, and by refusing the early, better opportunities, he ensured that the later ones would be worse, and the final ones would not exist at all. He was always holding out for the price of yesterday, in a market that only moved toward tomorrow. The decision to hold out, to reject the imperfect lifelines in the hope of a perfect one, was the fatal decision. Fuld chose pride and hope over survival, and the window closed. I want to pause here, because this is the part that matters most. Why did a brilliant, experienced Wall Street titan make a decision this catastrophic? The first force was arrogance bred by success. Fuld had been right for so long, had made so much money, had survived so many crises, that he could not accept he was fundamentally wrong now. When the market valued Lehman low, he concluded the market was mistaken, not that he was. Deep success breeds the certainty that you know better than everyone else, and that certainty is deadly when the world has actually changed. The second force was the moral hazard of the expected rescue. Fuld believed the government would save Lehman because it had helped save others. This belief made him reckless. Why accept a painful deal now if a bailout is coming? But the rescue did not come. For a mix of political and practical reasons, the authorities let Lehman fail, a decision that shocked Fuld and much of Wall Street. He had bet the firm's survival on being rescued, and he lost. The third force was pride, as a substitute for judgment. Selling Lehman cheaply felt like humiliation, but a leader's job is to save the institution, not his own ego. Fuld could not separate the two. He defended the price and the pride until there was no company left to be proud of. In finance, the willingness to accept a painful loss today is often the only thing that prevents a fatal one tomorrow. Fuld could not accept the painful loss, so he took the fatal one. Now, let us watch the detonation. In the second week of September 2008, it all came apart with terrifying speed. Lehman's stock collapsed. Confidence evaporated. The firm's trading partners began to pull away, terrified of being exposed to a company that might not exist tomorrow. This is the death spiral of a bank. The moment the market believes you will fail, that belief becomes the very thing that makes you fail, as everyone rushes for the exits at once. Over one desperate weekend, frantic negotiations took place. Potential buyers, including Barclays and Bank of America, examined Lehman. The government convened emergency meetings, but this time, there would be no rescue. The authorities declined to guarantee Lehman's losses, and without that guarantee, the buyers walked away. Bank of America turned instead to another troubled firm. The last lifeboats rowed off, empty. And so, in the early hours of September 15th, 2008, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. It was the largest bankruptcy filing in United States history, involving more than $600 billion in assets. A 158-year-old institution, gone. The consequences were catastrophic, not just for Lehman's thousands of employees who lost their jobs and often their savings, but for the entire world. Lehman's collapse sent a shockwave through the global financial system, freezing credit, triggering panic, and helping to plunge the world into the deepest financial crisis since the Great Depression. The detonation was felt in every economy on Earth. So what killed Lehman Brothers? The comfortable answer is the financial crisis, the housing crash, forces beyond anyone's control. But you have seen the evidence. Lehman was not killed simply by the housing market. It chose, with enormous leverage, to bet the firm on that market. Lehman was not killed by a lack of escape routes. It was offered capital and buyers, and its leader turned them down, holding out for a better deal. Lehman was not killed by bad luck alone. It was killed by a decision. The decision of a proud, certain man to reject the imperfect lifelines available to him, gambling on a rescue that never came, until the firm that could have been saved was worth nothing. Richard Fuld had the chance to save Lehman. All he had to do was say yes to survival on terms he found humiliating. He said no, and 158 years of history detonated in a single weekend. There is a lesson here, and it is as old as pride itself. The thing that makes you powerful is almost always the thing that kills you. Fuld's aggressive confidence built his career and his fortune, and then made him unable to accept, when it mattered most, that he was wrong. His belief in Lehman's greatness carried it to the summit, and then convinced him it was worth more than any buyer would pay, until it was worth nothing at all. The hardest thing in business is to accept a painful loss while you still can, to sell low, to swallow pride, to take the imperfect deal that keeps you alive. Almost everyone, when the moment comes, cannot do it. They hold out for the better price, the fairer terms, the rescue that is surely coming, and the window closes. Lehman had everything. 158 years of history, billions in profit, one of the most powerful men on Wall Street at its head, and it lost all of it, not because it had to, but because saying yes to survival felt like defeat. That was the fatal decision. The body is closed. The cause of death is recorded. If this autopsy taught you something, subscribe and stay with us, because next time, there will be another body on the table. There always is. I'll see you in the next examination.